You've probably heard the question, what is a cell before, right? Probably in a biology class. But what if that exact same question could unlock the secret to what makes a community group really truly work? Well, today, we're going to explore a model that does just that.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. When you see this question, I'm betting your mind goes straight to science class. You're thinking microscopes, membranes, nuclei, all that stuff. But nope, that's not the kind of cell we're talking about today.
See, in this context, a cell is actually a model for building a community. Think of it like a small group of people who get together regularly and use the metaphor of a living cell to understand how they should function and grow.
So here's our game plan. We'll look at the basic anatomy of this community model, we'll dive into its core DNA, figure out what makes a group healthy or unhealthy according to this system, and finally, this is the really interesting part, we'll see what actually makes these groups grow.
First up, let's break down the structure of this thing. The model says that a healthy community has 5 core systems, and it uses a metaphor that's just impossible to forget. It's the 5 fingers of your hand.
Let's start with the thumb. You know how all your other fingers kind of work in relation to your thumb? Well, here, the thumb represents the cell itself, the core group. It's the anchor that everything else connects back to.
Next, we've got the pointer finger. And what do you do with this finger? You point. So in this model, this represents the group's direction and its outreach, how it points the way and invites new people to come and join.
Now the middle finger, it's the tallest one, and that height is used as a symbol for leadership. These are the people who are trained to guide the group and oversee its health.
The ring finger is up next. We usually associate this one with commitment and promises, right? So here, it represents accountability. It's all about the system of support and responsibility that members have for each other.
And finally, the smallest finger, the pinky. This one stands for equipping. The idea is that a healthy community really focuses on preparing and strengthening its newest members, or maybe its most vulnerable ones, just helping them get stronger.
So, we've got these 5 systems, all working together like fingers on a hand. But what holds them all together? What gives them direction? For that, we've got to look inside the cell, at its core, DNA.
So according to the source material for this model, a group can have all sorts of different goals and expectations. But the one single unifying factor that's supposed to hold it all together is a central focus on Christ.
This is what the model calls the cell DNA. And it's a pretty brilliant metaphor, isn't it? Just like real DNA carries all the instructions for a living organism, this central focus is seen as the core code that gives the community its identity and directs all of its actions.
And this image right here illustrates the goal perfectly. When that DNA is at the center, it's meant to power all the different functions of the group. Everything from outreach and support to learning and just hanging out. The goal is to create a balanced and complete or holistic community.
Okay, this brings us to a super important point. What happens when that balance is lost? Let's take a look at the difference between a healthy group and what this model calls a distorted one.
According to this whole framework, if the group puts anything else at its center, anything at all, instead of its core DNA, it becomes distorted. The whole balance just gets thrown way off.
Now, this is where it gets really clear. On the left, you see that ideal, holistic community, balancing a ton of different functions. But on the right, you see what they call a defective cell, where everything revolves around just one thing, like recruitment. The group completely loses its multi-purpose nature.
And here are some more examples of what that can look like. A group can become just a counseling group focused only on support, or just a study group or a task group. They even have a name for one that's purely social, a love boat group. The model argues that a truly healthy community has to be more than just one of these things.
So if the goal is a balanced, holistic group, what actually makes it grow and multiply? Well, let's look at some absolutely fascinating data that came from a survey of these cell leaders.
Get this. A pretty big survey was done, covering 900 leaders across 8 different countries. And what they found was kind of shocking. The key ingredients for a growing group were the exact same everywhere. It didn't matter what the culture was.
First, let's look at what doesn't predict growth. It's all the things you might expect to matter. A leader's age, their gender, their education, even their personality. Whether they were an extrovert or an introvert, none of it had any correlation with whether the group grew. Isn't that wild? So, if personal traits don't matter, what does? Well, the survey found it all came down to specific, repeatable actions. It wasn't about who the leader was, but what the leader did. Things like the leader praying for the members,
The group spending time together outside of meetings, setting clear goals, following up with visitors, and actually preparing for the meetings. These practical habits were the real key.
So the crucial takeaway here is this. The cell model isn't just a clever metaphor. It's a detailed blueprint. It argues for building a community that is balanced, that serves a bunch of different functions, and that grows through very specific, intentional actions.
And that leaves us with a final question to think about. Looking at this model, whether you agree with all of it or not, what do you believe are the truly essential parts of any strong community that you've been a part of?